what is the most valuable asset for every company, every corporation, and every organization? It's this organization data. And this data need to be protected by any means. So that's where data management comes in place. As a security professionals, your job will be uh, to come up with the solutions to protect this data. So let's go some key definitions for the data management. So information classification, basically it is just a process that helps to determine what classification this data underlined and what type of protection organization must have for this data. And in a few slides from here, we will go over different classifications. You have to understand there are two types of classifications for government data and public data, basically. Data owner. So many people get confused with data creator. Data creator usually is not a data owner. The person who created the data often has no rights or ownership over it if he works for organization. So data owner is the organization or person who actually owns the rights to this data. He might not be a creator, or he might not be the one whose ideas in this data, right? But he, the one who owns all rights for it. Data custodian. So basically, what is the custody? Someone who holds this data, right? So data custodian would be a person who is responsible to keep this data, to make sure this data kept with the quality requirements for it. Data producers, they are also people who are creators. So data producers and data creators, it's the same terminology, and basically it's people who create this data or capturing this data. Data consumers are people who consume the data, who basically paying money to purchase this information, or maybe not paying money but working for organization, but they are not creators. They are only the people who use this data to perform their work. Privacy officer. So this person, together with the data custodian, make sure you memorize this terminology because it's important for the exam, ensures the integrity of this data, that it follows for the government laws, or organization laws, and so on. We're going to talk about pulping, pulverizing, degaussing, purging, and wiping just in a moment, but basically it's all methods of destroying data. When we talk about destruction of data, it's often physical destruction of data, because if we're keeping our data in a digital form, and if it's like highly sensitive data, we need to make sure this data destroyed and cannot be retrieved by anybody else. So let's talk about government and military classification levels. So on the left, you can see all government classifications. On the right, you can see military classifications. And they are more or less interlinked with each other, but you need to understand that when you're just working for the private sector, you often don't need to have a level of secret clearance as if you were working for the military. And I know some of you were in the military, and probably hold secret or top secret clearance. So you know this perfectly fine how it works. So if there is unclassified data or public full distribution data, that's something that publicly available and can be easily found with Google search, right? But if we're talking about private restricted data or secret and top secret data, that's something should never go public. So private restricted in public sector, it's something that belongs to the company and it's something that should be kept in the secret. Same with the government classification, secret, top secret. These levels should not be released to the public without specific permissions. So people who work for the military and somehow release this information called whistleblowers, and they actually can be charged with treason. Okay, some of data destruction techniques. So some of the data we keep in digital form, some of the data we keep in printed papers. So ink eradication, that's something that we would use for printed information. Software programs, something for the digital data. Hardware tools, however, can be used for both to destroy the data. And here we can see a slide with sanitation programs. So basically, sanitation programs don't look like this. It's just visual representation that the Stout came up with. But basically, sanitation programs will rewrite your data over and over and over again on your hard drive until original data can not longer be restored. Shredding. For example, if a government facility trying to destroy the data, the best way to destroy this data would be simply just destroy hard drives. And shredding is something that will put these hard drives through the shredder, just like a paper shredder. And shredding also goes for the paper. When we shred paper, we get small chunks of paper with the information. However, if we can play jigsaw puzzles with the paper and try to restore the document with hard drives, it will not work the same way because simply hard drives cannot be put back into same piece and be able to restore this information. Pulverizing basically works same way as a shredder for hard drives, but it destroys hard drives to the dust. Again, you will not be able to restore this data. Degaussing. Degaussing is another way of destroying information on hard drives because they're using very strong magnet, and this strong magnet degaussing the hard drives only. But if you have computers with the solid state drives, there is no way to degauss. And the best way would be probably to shred this. There are some patents on destruction for solid state drives because solid state drives have chips on it. And I'm pretty sure after going through the shredder, you will not be able to put this hard drive or solid state drive back together. But because people trying to come up with the most secure way to destroy information, they also created something that looks like blender, where you put the solid state drive chips and blend them together. So that's something we will see when we're shredding our paper. But what if you don't want this paper, like someone to play jigsaw puzzle with your paper? You need to destroy this. One of the cheapest way probably to destroy paper is just burn in the fire. But there is another way of pulping. So basically, they use chemical to get paper to the condition when it's more like a dough. And after that, you will not be able to restore any information from it. Here you can see some data disposal laws, and HIPAA, it's regulations for the medical fields. So basically, HIPAA, it's something that you need to know for sure because you will meet this acronym all over Security Plus exam. But what it does, it protects medical patients' private information. And by the way, I forgot to say COD. COD basically it's a certificate of destruction. When you ordering a third-party company to destroy your hard drives or destroy your information, maybe your to shred your paper document, they have to provide you with document that proves that they actually destroyed this and not uh, like just erase and resell it. And unfortunately, it happened before to few companies when they use their third-party destruction company, and they were supposed to get their hard drives destroyed, but instead this company provided them with COD, but they just simply erased those hard drives and sold them on eBay. And as you can understand, it is a crime. So let's talk about advanced cryptography. And we already talked about simple cryptography earlier, but what is cryptography in general? It is a science that studies how to encrypt messages and methods to encrypt messages, and it uses different types of encryptions. So encryption is the process itself of scrambling the message, if you say, to prevent from unauthorized access. Encryption key, it's not the method, it's a string that will help to unlock this encryption or decrypt. Digital signature, it's basically, as it say, combination of encryption and hashing values. We're going to talk about hashing values in a second, but you need to know that hashing algorithm, even if it's underlies under encryption, it is not, well, it's underlines under cryptography, but it is not an encryption because hashing algorithm create one-way function that basically destroy data and provide output, like fixed lane output, which will be nothing more but a signature of the hashed data. It cannot be turned around, and you cannot just take a hash and get data back from this hash. So it's one-way function. Low latency, it's a delay between hashing and starting to transmit the data. So as you all understand that encryption takes time, and some encryption algorithms, they take longer, some encryption algorithms take shorter time. So the more secure your algorithm, the probably more time it will take to encrypt. And this period that you take to encrypt data and before transfer it has it's called basically latency. So you want to have a low latency, because if you have high latency, it means your message is being transmitted very in a slow pace. High resilience cryptography, basically secure and resistant to attacks algorithms, and we're going to talk about them in a moment too. Non-repudiation, that's really important term in cryptography. It means that someone cannot deny something. So basically, if I send a message and then I'm saying I didn't send this message, but this message was encrypted with asymmetric algorithm, I cannot deny that it's me because asymmetric encryption provides non-repudiation. So now the difference between symmetric and asymmetric cryptography. So symmetric cryptography using one single key. Asymmetric cryptography using two keys, basically a set of keys. One is public and another one is private. And both of these keys, basically, they are part of one. They are mathematically related. Confusion. It's basically part of cryptographic algorithms that makes this breaking this algorithm as difficult as possible by confusing someone who is breaking this algorithm. So diffusion, on the other side, it's something that changed the ciphertext the way that it is not the same as the original text. So we're going to, some of you who played NCL, you guys had to decrypt and encrypt some of the messages, but you were dealing mostly with simple encryption algorithms. Nowadays, we're using some difficult encryption algorithms that we're going to mention at the end of this slide deck. And you have to understand it takes years of calculation power to break those algorithms. And collision is something we want to avoid because collision usually doesn't go with the encryption as much as it goes with hashing. Because sometimes two completely different files or texts can have exactly same hashing output. That's the reason why we don't use MD5 anymore. That's the reason why we don't use SHA-1 anymore. Because unfortunately, collision is very possible with those two algorithms. And digital envelope, it's something that we use with asymmetric encryption. And basically, it's a small message before the sending actual message. We use it to pass the key. We are going to discuss this just in a second because we need to first understand how asymmetric encryption algorithm works. Trusted platform model, it's a hardware. It's something that might or might not be installed in your computer, but if you have one of the advanced laptops and modern laptops, most likely you have it installed, and that's something you will use to store cryptographic keys. Hardware security model is HSM. It's a piece of hardware that you will install into your computer every time you need to get access to the information. Basically, it's something that would be giving you permission to get access to the encrypted documents or so on. Okay, so here's some terms for advanced cryptography: obfuscation, cryptographic service provider, cryptographic modules, crypto system, key exchange, ephemeral key late, and symmetric asymmetric systems, random number generators, and perfect forward security. All of these terms, all this information you can find from my mind maps, but we basically going over all of them. So obfuscation, it's something that will create the message that nobody will be able to read, basically obfuscate this message, right? Uh, Service provider, there are multiple different cryptographic service providers that can be used when we trying to transmit our information from one location to another. Cryptographic modules, that's something that will help us to encrypt and decrypt the data. Most of the systems, they have embedded cryptographic modules. Crypto system, it is algorithm and key together. So every encryption that we can get algorithm to encrypt and decrypt and key would be called a crypto system. Key exchange. So key exchange is the practice of passing the key to the opponent or person who will need to decrypt this information. And it works both for symmetric and asymmetric algorithms. So key exchange can be difficult in a process of exchanging key for the symmetric algorithm. For the asymmetric algorithm, it works that you basically don't need to exchange any keys. You have your own key and you have public key that publicly available and anyone can have it. So symmetric, asymmetric systems we will go over in a moment. And random number generator. We can say that there is absolutely no true random number generators. They are all pseudo numbers generators, because computer cannot give you random number. It always running algorithm, and this algorithm would provide you with output that might seem random to you, but it's completely not random for the machine. And perfect forward secrecy, basically that term defines that algorithm should be well known and available for anyone, and the only secret part of the crypto system should be the key. So here's some block cipher modes. We're going to talk about block ciphers actually right now. So when you're passing a large amount of data, would be a text or any information, basically any data, you will need to encrypt it. And if you will be encrypting entire data, it will take a lot of time, so you will have high latency, and we don't want that. So what we would take, we would break this data into blocks and encrypt each individual block. Plus, we will change key for each block. So this way, attacker who will capture our data will not be able to decrypt the entire message, because if he captured one of the blocks, it will take a long time to decrypt it with the key, and then he will not be able to see entire message, because to understand and decrypt the message, he need actually all parts of it. So all keys and all blocks. Stream ciphers, that's what I explained to you, basically when you have to encrypt on the fly. And with now calculation power and modern computing, stream ciphers can work pretty fast, but back in the days, it didn't seem like a good idea because of the high latency. Salt. We use salting when we are hashing our passwords. Salt has nothing to do with encrypting messages. However, it's a really important part for hashing. So when we need to hash our password, and we need to make sure this password will be not easily guessable, your system automatically, you don't even know that, You don't even see that, but automatically will add some random length of string of numbers or letters and numbers or to your password, and then it will hash. And in this form, if you will save your passwords on the computer and somehow these passwords will be stolen from you, it will take attacker longer time to break these passwords because of added salt. It helps with the passwords, with some weak passwords and passwords that use common words, which is bad practice, but people still do. We already mentioned this diffusion, collision, and digital signature, so we just skip this. In symmetric algorithm we use single key, and this key is the also called shared key. That's what you need to know for now. And here is asymmetric algorithm. So each party has its own private key and public key. You would encrypt the message. If you're sending this message to someone, you would encrypt this message with the public key of the receiver, and the receiver with private key would be able to decode this message. Public key can be available for anyone, but it cannot be used to decrypt message. Hashing algorithm, once again, hashing is not an encryption. You cannot decrypt hash. It's one-way function. I always like to explain hashing as the grinder for the meat. So you throw the steak into the grinder. Whatever comes out, that's your hash. You cannot put this back into the steak. It's used for data integrity checks. And what it means, if any single bit in the data would change, entire hash output will change too. So that's how you know this data have not been tampered with. For example, you download some information, and whoever provided this information will provide the hash value for this information. Then you're running this information through the hashing algorithm, and if you're receiving the same output, same hashing signature as the original one, that means this is original data. This data have not been tampered or changed. And that's how digital signatures work. So for example, I need to provide digital signature, and digital signature has a hash, and that's the hash will be encrypted. So hash is just the portion of digital signature of the file. But if you like to provide this digital signature to sign some document, this digital signature must be encrypted. That's how trustworthy platform model looks like on older machines. Usually it's embedded technology now into your motherboard, and it doesn't look as such a large. Well, technically it's not large, it's just zoomed in. So here you can see some key functions of TPM. And as I said, most of the modern computers, they have it embedded. So they do test hardware components at startup. So basically, if you try to install corrupted operating system, you might mess up with the TPM as well, and it will not provide you the level of security as it's supposed to be. That's why running authentic operating systems or legit operating systems license is really important. And TPM can provide with true random number. So remember how I told you random numbers are impossible when you're running through the algorithm of your processor, because your processor is nothing else but calculator, and it doesn't give random numbers. It works with the algorithms. So TPM actually provide you with true random number. And hardware security modules, that's something that can be inserted in your host. So they must be physically connected. They pretty much do as TPM, provide cryptographic functions. And it can be used as a card or external security device, maybe like thumb drive. And helps you to encrypt and decrypt data. This one is quite old one by the cipher. Let's talk about some cryptographic attacks. Cryptanalysis technically is not an attack. Cryptanalysis is the study of the encrypted message. But of course, it can be used as a part of attack. Brute force, when we're talking about brute force, we're usually thinking about hashing algorithms. So brute force helps you to break passwords. Basically, when you are going to break into someone's system, you will try all possible variations and combinations until you get one. That's a brute force. Plain text attack, when some of the plain text is available and you, based on this plain text, can guess the key and algorithm that used for the encrypted text. So analytic attack is sophisticated mathematical manipulation of cryptanalysis. Basically, it's a study of the algorithm based on math. And weakness exploitation attacks. So all majority of crypto systems known by today have some weaknesses. Of course, we're trying to find with the algorithm that is uncrackable. But as we know, the more sophisticated algorithm we come up with, the more sophisticated tools hackers will develop to crack it. Encryption attack, it's something that we commonly see now, and I'm saying commonly because this attack's happening more and more often, when somebody just try to manipulate encryption on the way to encrypt your data or send you incorrect key or maybe wrong certificate. So encryption attack, basically any attack on encrypted message. Man in the middle attack is not really cryptographic attacks. Even this slide says that it is. Man in the middle is often just the person who gets on the way between you and the receiver of the and another opponent on the communication line, and are able, this person or technology in the middle between you and the other opponent, able to retrieve this information from you, and as a result can be able to manipulate and even try to recreate like three-way communication when your receiver will think that he's receiving information from you, when in fact it's receiving from the unknown person or unknown system. And downgrade attack, it is a true attack, and this is not just related to the cryptography, but it's also important in cryptography as well. So when we using some low quality, low level of encryption on the system when we're transmitting the data. Basically, if attacker was able to get access to settings of your computer and set all your encryptions to the known to be vulnerable encryption algorithms. And then this man in the middle would be able to capture all the data and basically decrypt it because he knows exactly what lower quality algorithm is used. So we talk about cryptanalysis, and main goal for the cryptanalysis retrieve as much information as possible about the plain text. So when I'm talking about cryptanalysis, and I studied cryptography for a very long time, it's one of my favorite topics. When you're trying to decipher text, just the text, and you know nothing about algorithm that used, you need to know that the most often used letter in English language is letter E. So if you see this letter had been repeated, like one of the letters had been repeated as many times as possible, most often than others, that primarily could be letter E. And I'm talking about some simple ciphers like Caesar ciphers, right? If we're gonna talk about vinaigrette, it's gonna take way longer to decrypt this message without knowing, because each letter in each word can have different encryption, different key. So the most common word in English language is the. And most common one letter word is going to be which is a. And two letter word is gonna be is. So I know there is different like at, to, but most commonly we use when we write the text is. So if we see all three letter words, let's assume all of them are the. Of course, we have to make sure that combination of the letters is repeating, because if we have two different combinations for three letter words, that's most likely different words, or it's using algorithm that changing the key with each letter. So the process of analyzing this text and retrieving as much information from a text, we would call cryptanalysis. So as I said, cryptanalysis is not actually an attack. It's more like a study of the encrypted message. So exploited info, basically, we know the algorithm that's used, we have available ciphertext, or maybe we even have portions of plain text that will allow us to decrypt the rest of the message. Brute force attack, we just mentioned this, but we need to know that the longer keys, the less likely it will be decrypted or broken. And analytical attack, it's basically, we already talked, it's the mathematical manipulations with data to break this attack, to break the encryption. So statistical attack. Every algorithm has its weaknesses. So basically it takes these weaknesses and try to exploit them into the breaking. We're going to talk about this in a moment when I will mention different encryptions. So key clustering. Remember when I told you that sometimes same ciphertext can have different keys? So if somebody will manage to get not your key, but sort of get key that will still decrypt this message, that's what is key clustering attack. And choosing ciphertext attack, basically we just get the ciphertext and similar to the ciphertext, and we will just decrypt with the decryption process. Even we don't know the key, we can break the key. So this probably one of the difficult parts to break the key, right? You might know the algorithm, you might have the ciphertext, but if you don't have a key, it might take a lot of time for you basically to figure out this key. And if you know plain text, it's very easy to expose everything. So if you already know the text and you need to configure the key, you're just matching your plain text and ciphertext and trying to figure out what algorithm was used and what rule, which is key, was used to create the ciphertext. And why would be this important? If you know anything about Enigma machine and how Enigma machine ciphertext was broken, they use known plain text attack. And they were able to break unbreakable encryption. If you never watched this movie about Enigma machine, please do. It's with Benedict Cumberbatch, and it is amazing. It is an amazing movie that helps you to explore how we actually were able to win the war with Nazi. Because before we were able to read these messages between Nazi, we kept getting into, Nazi was winning until we were able to read their communication. So please spend some time and watch this movie. You will be entertained by great performance, but also by actually true story as a background for it. We already talked man in the middle. We're gonna skip a dictionary attack. So when you guys played NCL, some of the password that you needed to decrypt was you were able to decrypt with dictionary attack. So when you use rainbow tables or dictionary, that's very similar to each other, except dictionary attack uses common words and common variations of these words, and then it has its hashes. And rainbow tables, basically, it's nothing else but a huge list of hashes and this combination of passwords. Relay attack, that's another thing that we need to talk about. So when attacker does relay attack, attacker doesn't really need to decrypt your message or decrypt your key. Basically, attacker captures this portion of your encrypted message and later will be able to inject this message into the communication through the browser, for example, and get access to decrypted message already, or maybe something else. For example, when you're shopping online, you will be provided with one-time key, right? And somebody will be able to capture it and use it to change items, for example, in your cart, or make these items go to the wrong address. So it can be exploited in many, many ways, and it's one of the most common attacks so far on the web browsers. Public key attacks, very common too, because what happens, public key we use when we use certificates for the websites. So if your website has a certificate, you would have PKI, right? And attacker can manipulate a certificate authority or create a certificate that will look like your certificate and can be used instead of your original certificate to validate the website. And there are many different actually ways to do PKI attack, but spoofing, it's one of the most common. It's used to be a really common attack on websites. Here is something about side channel attack. and basically it's exploiting any information that available publicly for the crypto system. And as you can see, it's pretty much everything you can get from it. So now let's talk in detail about symmetric encryption, and I promise you I'm going to be done in maybe 10 minutes. So symmetric encryption has only one key. We already mentioned that. Same key to encrypt and decrypt the message. We use symmetric encryption with block cipher and stream cipher. We already learned the difference between. Now, I want you to look at this slide right now and pay attention to Ron Cipher's version 2 or Ron's code version 2, RC2, and Ron Cipher's Ron code version 5. These are both symmetric cryptography methods that are used right now, and they are going to be an exam in the questions. So you don't need to remember exactly the name Ron Cipher. You just need to know that RC2 and RC5, it's a symmetric encryption that used with the block cipher. The International Data Encryption Algorithm, IDEA, another symmetric, but it's also used with blocks. Is not as common right now, but it was used with PGP. That's why we need to know about it. And PGP stands for pretty good privacy, but PGP is not just encryption itself, it's entire crypto system. So what PGP does, it uses symmetric and asymmetric encryption. And the symmetric portion of encryption, it's actually IDEA. Asymmetric, we're going to talk in a moment. So that's what I was going to tell you when we were talking about different problems with encryption. So at some point, data encryption standards, or DAS, that's how you have to remember it, was very popular and very commonly used in our military. But then somebody discovered how to obfuscate this method and basically break this method. So since this method is so fast and more or less secure, they didn't want to just go away from it. They were trying, in the government, of course, I mean, by they, to increase security. So they came up with the idea of triple DES. And triple DES is it's encrypting algorithm, encrypting plain text into the ciphertext 3 times. But there are 2 different triple DES algorithms that known. One is encryption, decryption, encryption, and another one when they just encrypt 3 times. So which one is meant by triple DES here is not explained, but you need to remember that triple DES also deprecated and they don't use this anymore because it has common vulnerabilities. So if you know that someone's still using triple DES, tell them that it's not secure, and with the current calculation power on our computers, this algorithm can be easily broken. AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, that's what we use now. And yes, it came in replacement to DES and triple DES. Blowfish, twofish, skipjack. So that's all symmetric algorithms that we use to encode our messages. They all replace DES. Blowfish is most common for the block cipher. Twofish also block cipher, but the blowfish that something is commonly used. Skipjack. As you can see, it's created for and by NSA, and it's requires a lot of calculation power, so that's why it's using its own chip. So Clipper chip and advanced RISC machine. Basically, it's encryption machine itself. So what is symmetric encryption pros? Well, it's fast. It requires low CPU usage. Cons, not secure. Would I agree with this cons right now? No, I would not. Because some of the previously mentioned algorithms such as blowfish, twofish, they are very secure. What is not secure about it is the method to transfer the key from one point to another point, from the person who encrypts the message to the person who decrypts the message, because we use one single shared key. So that's the only not secure portion of it. And if we find a way how securely transmit this key from one point to another, this symmetric encryption actually fairly secure. So now on the screen you can see some of these algorithms that we use for the symmetric encryption. You don't need to write down anything because I already shared with you my cryptography mind map. All information there about each individual of these algorithms. So you just need to understand the difference between block cipher and stream cipher. And you need to know which one actually used for block cipher and which one is used for the stream cipher. And let's talk about asymmetric. So in asymmetric algorithm, we're using two pairs of keys, right? We already mentioned this. So each individual in communication process, we usually, when we explain encryption, we use Bob and Alice and Eve, who is always listening. So like three-way communication. Bob and Alice try to exchange information, and Eve is always listening and trying to get this information. So Bob and Alice, they both have two sets of keys. One is the public key and one is the private key. So Bob private key and Bob public key, and Alice private key and Alice public key. And different algorithms use this asymmetric encryption, little bit slightly different on the way of designing these keys. But right now I want you to pay attention to Diffie-Hellman, because this is like core of asymmetric encryption. And as you can see, it's quite old. It's 1976. And Diffie-Hellman is a little bit different from what nowadays we use as an asymmetric algorithm. So you can see it's using symmetric keys. Symmetric keys doesn't mean that your key and key of your opponent going to be the same, right? No, that means that your key and your opponent, your private key and your public key, they are symmetric. So if you put them next to each other, they're gonna match. That's all. Ilgamal, that's another system, and that's actually an encryption system that use discrete math to create these keys. So it's one of the difficult to break. Elliptic curve, very commonly used, ECC. With elliptic curve, often we like to encrypt something that is need to be kept in a high level of security. I was going to mention that one of those single sign-on systems using elliptic curve cryptography, but it just slipped out of my mind what system exactly. Merkel-Hellman, another asymmetric encryption. Again, all these asymmetric encryptions in my mind map that you can read. And Rives, Shammer, Alderman, RSA encryption. That would be one of the well-known asymmetric encryptions that currently used. So it's based on large factoring numbers. So as you can see, all of these algorithms use slightly different approaches to encrypting messages or providing with the key. So RSA has extremely large factoring numbers. So break them is pretty much impossible. And we're not talking about factoring numbers like 17 and 13. We're talking about numbers that have extremely large value, right? So it will take a lot of calculation power, and it's still unknown if it's even possible. So as the latest information, this RSA haven't been broken yet. Encrypting file system, EFS, it's something that provides us a symmetric encryption, but it's also something that related with NTFS and Windows directly. So if you're not using Windows or NTFS file system, you don't have to worry about it, but it's something that you need to know about. So NTFS provides some security features on Windows, right? And the security features could be as encryption. So you can encrypt files in this system. And the encryption that you will use is going to be EFS. Pretty good privacy, PGP. I mentioned earlier, PGP is the whole system, is not just encryption algorithm. It's encryption program that use symmetric and asymmetric algorithms at the same time. So PGP allows to use private and public key to encrypt shared key. So basically your message will be encrypted in a symmetric algorithm, but the key used for the symmetric algorithm will be encrypted in asymmetric algorithm. So you will be able to transmit this key securely. And as you know, even again, Bob and Alice communicated, and Eve was able to capture this message. It's highly unlikely Eve will be able to decode this message without key. GPG, another encryption tool, similar to PGP, but it protects all media that we use right now, data storage basically. With EFS, a single problem. It works only on the NTFS system. So if your USB stick, for example, is formatted as a FAT system, FAT32 or exFAT, you will not be able to encrypt it. And BitLocker, it is a Windows feature, and it's a large program that allows you to encrypt entire hard drive. So we talk about asymmetric encryption, and here is on the image we can talk about. So we have A is Alice, B as a Bob, and this is person in the middle would be Eve. So I'll take the data and I will encrypt this data with the public key. I will transmit with this data to the Bob, and Bob will take his private key and decrypt this message. That's pretty much how it works. However, if Eve will capture this data and always she has the public key, she cannot decrypt this message with the public key, because public key is not part of the symmetric keys that allows to decrypt. It allows to encrypt and encrypt only. Asymmetric encryption provides non-repudiation because your public key is a symmetric part of your private key. And when you send the data encrypted with your public key, you cannot say that you did not send this data because it's matching your private key. So yeah, here basically encrypt data with recipient's public key, and recipient will decrypt it with the private key. But how we provide digital signature for non-repudiation process? We encrypt data with sender's private key. So I take my private key and I encrypt it, and I will get a private signature, and then I will get it hash, right, for this data. And basically what I'm getting to, forget. So I'm taking my data, I'm getting a hash, and I encrypt this hash with my private key. So that provides a signature that provides that I am who I am, and I cannot deny that I sent this message. So here are some of these algorithms. I also have this algorithms in mind map. BitLocker, basically BitLocker using your TPM chip, and it can encrypt your entire system. When you're using BitLocker, make sure you will know the password, because if you will lose the password, you will not be able to do anything and access to your system at all. And with that, we are finished. I'm going to stop recording and then I can take your questions.